The projector screen went dark. My dissertation advisor wasn't supposed to be at David's investor pitch. I felt my husband's hand grip my wrist under the table, his fingernails digging into my skin. The same spot he'd grabbed this morning when I'd suggested coming to the gala separately. We arrived together, Sarah. You're my wife. It looks better. Better for him, he meant. Better for the investors to see the stable, married CEO with the pretty, silent wife at his side. Dr. Patricia Chen stood at the podium now, her silver hair catching the spotlight. She was supposed to be in Boston. I'd specifically scheduled my defense for next month to avoid any overlap with David's world. My world and his world weren't supposed to touch. That was the unspoken rule I'd learned to follow over 5 years of marriage. Ladies and gentlemen, Dr. Chen's voice cut through the murmur of 300 tech investors and venture capitalists. I apologize for the interruption, but there's something you all need to know before you write any checks tonight. David stood up so fast his chair scraped against the floor. Security, sit down, Mr. Thompson. Dr. Chen's voice was steel. I'm a tenured professor at MIT. I have every right to be here. Especially since your wife is my doctoral student. The ballroom erupted. I heard someone gasp. David's grip on my wrist tightened until I thought the bone might crack. Let me take you back 6 hours. To when this nightmare of an evening began. I'd been in our home office, the small room David allowed me to use for what he called my little projects. He'd come home early, which never meant anything good. I quickly minimized the window showing my patent application, the one that would change everything if it went through. The one he couldn't know about, Sarah. He stood in the doorway, his 6-foot frame blocking the light. I need you to wear the navy dress tonight. The one with the high neck. Not the red dress I'd bought last week with money I'd saved from the grocery budget he gave me. Not anything that might draw attention. The navy one is at the cleaners, I lied. Then wear the gray. And those pearl earrings my mother gave you. He walked to my desk, glanced at the screen showing an innocent recipe blog I'd pulled up just in time. What are you doing? Looking at dinner ideas for next week. He picked up my notebook, the one where I'd been calculating dosages for my cancer research. To him, it looked like random numbers. You spend a lot of time on this computer. You wanted me to learn to cook better. I kept my voice even. Calm. After 5 years, I'd learned that any emotion was ammunition. Right. He set the notebook down. Be ready by 6. And Sarah? Don't embarrass me tonight. These investors are important. Just smile and nod if anyone asks you questions. Let me do the talking. The way he always did. The way he had at our wedding, our anniversary parties, every dinner with his colleagues. Sarah doesn't work. She's focusing on our home. Maybe someday kids. As if my PhD coursework didn't exist. As if the late nights I spent in the MIT lab didn't count. As if the breakthrough I'd made 3 months ago, the one that pharmaceutical companies were quietly bidding millions for, was just a fantasy. I'd met David 7 years ago, right after my mother died. I was lost, drowning in grief, taking a semester off from my master's program. He'd been charming then. Supportive. Take your time, he'd said. Heal. I'll take care of you. And he had, at first. Until taking care of became controlling. Until supporting my dreams became you don't need to work, I make enough for both of us. Until I looked up one day and realized I'd lost my LinkedIn profile, my professional network, and my independence. But I'd been fighting back in secret. Every Tuesday and Thursday when he thought I was at book club, I was in the lab. Every weekend when he went golfing, I was writing my dissertation. I'd hidden it all, knowing that if he found out, he'd find a way to stop me. He'd done it before, 3 years ago, when I'd mentioned going back to school. You don't need a PhD, Sarah. What are you trying to prove? That you're smarter than me? So I'd learned to hide. To lie. To become invisible in my own life while secretly building another one he knew nothing about. At 6:15, I stood in our bedroom wearing the gray dress and the pearl earrings. David circled me like a shark, looking for flaws. Your hair. Pull it back more. You look too available. I redid my hair. He nodded approval, then went to my purse. What are you doing? Just checking. He opened it, rifled through. Pulled out my lipstick. This color is too bright. Use something neutral. He'd been doing this more frequently lately. Checking my purse, my phone, my email. I'd had to create a separate email account on my laptop just for school correspondence. Had to lie about where I was going, who I was seeing. The control had gotten worse over the past year, coinciding with his startup's growth. The more successful he became, the more he needed me to be small. In the car ride to the Fairmont, David prepped me like I was a child going to her first day of school. Remember, if anyone asks what you do, you say you manage our home. Don't mention any school stuff. These people don't care about that. They want to see a stable family man, not someone whose wife is trying to compete with him. Compete. As if my cancer research and his fintech app were even in the same universe. And smile more. You have this resting face that makes you look angry. It's not attractive. I smiled. Practiced it in the visor mirror until my cheeks hurt. The Fairmont Grand Ballroom was spectacular. Crystal chandeliers, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking San Francisco Bay, tables set with white linens and fresh orchids. This was David's moment, his Series C pitch to 40 potential investors. The culmination of 3 years of building his company, TrueVest Financial. If tonight went well, he'd close $20 million in funding. We made our rounds. I smiled. Nodded. Let David introduce me as my wife, Sarah, with no last name, no identity beyond my relationship to him. When someone asked what I did, I delivered my line, I manage our home. When they pressed, because some people always did, David smoothly redirected. She's being modest. Sarah is brilliant with organization. Keeps my entire life running smoothly. Translation. She's a housewife. She's decorative. She's mine. We sat at table 12, surrounded by other couples where the wives all looked vaguely like me, well-dressed, well-behaved, quiet. David's mother, Diane, sat to my right. She leaned over during the appetizer course. That dress is lovely, Sarah, but doesn't it wash you out a bit? You should wear more color. Maybe some blush? I'd learned not to react to Diane. 5 years of subtle insults had built a thick skin. I'll remember that. David tells me you've been spending a lot of time on the computer lately. Internet shopping? She said it like an accusation. Just browsing. Well, try not to spend too much of David's money. He works very hard. David's money. Never our money. Never my money, even though I'd worked full-time as a research assistant before we married. Even though I'd had savings, which had somehow disappeared into our joint account that only David could access. The lights dimmed. David stood, squeezed my shoulder, a warning and a claim of ownership in one gesture, and walked to the stage. The projector screen lit up with his company logo. He was good at this. Charismatic. Confident. For 40 minutes, he painted a picture of TrueVest's future, of market disruption, of returns that would make early investors wealthy. I'd heard this pitch a dozen times in practice runs in our living room, where he'd made me sit and listen and nod and tell him he was brilliant. The investors were eating it up. I could see checkbooks practically opening in their minds. And then Dr. Chen walked in. She came through the side entrance, past the 2 security guards who tried to stop her. I watched her show them something, probably her MIT faculty ID, and point at the stage. Point at me. The guards looked uncertain, spoke into their radios, but didn't physically stop her. David was mid-sentence about quarterly projections when Dr. Chen reached the stage stairs. That's when everything froze. David saw her. His face went white, then red. Security. Get her out of here. But Dr. Chen was already at the microphone. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for the interruption. But there's something you all need to know before you write any checks tonight. I said get her out. David's voice cracked. The investors shifted uncomfortably. Sit down, Mr. Thompson. I'm a tenured professor at MIT. I have every right to be here. Especially since your wife is my doctoral student. The room exploded in whispers. Diane grabbed my arm. What is she talking about? I couldn't speak. My heart was hammering so hard I thought it might break through my chest. David's face had gone purple. That's ridiculous. Sarah isn't, she doesn't. Sarah Mitchell Thompson completed her doctoral dissertation 3 weeks ago. Dr. Chen interrupted. Her voice was calm, matter-of-fact, devastating. She'll defend it next month. Her research on targeted cancer therapy using modified T-cells represents one of the most significant breakthroughs in oncology in the past decade. Someone dropped their wine glass. The shattering seemed impossibly loud. More importantly, Dr. Chen continued. And I saw her glance at me with something like pride, Sarah's research has been patented. As of this morning, Biogenesis Pharmaceutical has purchased the licensing rights for $200 million. Sarah will retain 40% of all future royalties, which conservative estimates place at another $300 million over the next 10 years. The silence was deafening. David stood frozen on stage. I watched his brain trying to process, trying to find the angle, the spin, the way to make this about him. Sarah and I, he stammered. Oh no, Mr. Thompson. This has nothing to do with you. Dr. Chen's voice was ice. In fact, I have here a series of emails that suggest quite the opposite. She pulled out a laptop, connected it to the projector. David lunged toward her, but two security guards, different ones, I noticed, ones who weren't on his payroll, stepped between them. The first email appeared on screen. From David to me, 2 years ago. Sarah, I've been thinking about your school plans. I really don't think it's a good idea. You have responsibilities here. What will people think if my wife is constantly at MIT instead of supporting me? Let's table this discussion indefinitely. The second email, from 18 months ago. I noticed you've been gone a lot on Tuesday evenings. Book club shouldn't take 4 hours. I need you home. I've asked Helen to drop you from the roster. A third, from 6 months ago. Sarah, I checked your laptop history. Why are you researching PhD programs? We discussed this. You don't need more education. You need to focus on being a good wife. If you bring this up again, we're going to have a serious problem. Dr. Chen's voice cut through the shocked silence. These emails were sent to Sarah's personal account, which Mr. Thompson did not know she had. He believed he'd successfully isolated her from her academic pursuits. He was wrong. I felt 300 pairs of eyes on me. Diane had let go of my arm like I'd burned her. David's face was doing something strange, collapsing and hardening at the same time. Those are private. You have no right. Sarah gave me permission to share them. She wanted you all to know the truth before you invested in a man who systematically crushed his wife's dreams because he was threatened by her intelligence. That's not. I was protecting her. David's voice was desperate now. The PhD program is stressful. The research is dangerous. I was trying to keep her safe. By controlling her bank accounts. Dr. Chen pulled up another document. By giving her an allowance of $300 a month for groceries and personal items? By tracking her location on her phone without her knowledge? By isolating her from professional contacts and opportunities? Each question was a hammer blow. I watched David's investors lean away from their tables, away from association with him. By the way, Dr. Chen added, almost conversationally, Sarah's research was conducted entirely outside of these constraints. She used MIT's facilities Tuesday and Thursday evenings when Mr. Thompson believed she was at book club that he'd forcibly removed her from. She funded her initial research with money she saved from lying about grocery costs. She published her first paper under her maiden name to hide it from him. She looked directly at David now. Your wife is brilliant, Mr. Thompson. She's accomplished more in 3 years of secret research than most scientists achieve in a lifetime. And she did it while you were actively trying to keep her small and silent and controllable. The projector switched to a new image. My dissertation title, Targeted CAR T-Cell Therapy Using Modified Receptor Proteins. A Novel Approach to Solid Tumor Treatment. Below it, my credentials: MIT doctoral candidate. Lead researcher. Patent holder. Soon-to-be multimillionaire. I stood up. My legs were shaking, but they held me. Sarah, sit down. David's voice from the stage was pleading now. We can talk about this at home. This is between us. No. My voice sounded strange. Stronger than I'd heard it in years. This isn't between us anymore. This is the truth. I walked to the stage. Dr. Chen stepped aside, handed me the microphone. 300 people stared at me. David stood 5 feet away, looking like a stranger. I started my doctoral program 3 years ago, I said. My voice echoed in the silent ballroom. I kept it secret because my husband told me I didn't need more education. That I should focus on being a good wife. That pursuing my dreams was selfish and embarrassing to him. I looked at David. Really looked at him. Saw him for what he was, a small man who needed me to be smaller to feel big. I conducted my research in secret. I lied about where I was going. I hid my achievements because I knew if he found out, he'd find a way to stop me. And I was right to be afraid. because when he suspected I was doing something without his permission, he tracked my phone, checked my computer, isolated me from friends who might support me. Diane stood up. Sarah, I think you're being very dramatic. Your son, I interrupted, told me I was stupid for wanting to help cure cancer. He said my little science projects were a waste of time. He said no one would ever take me seriously as a researcher. And while he was saying those things, I was developing a treatment that could save hundreds of thousands of lives. The investors were typing furiously on their phones now. I could see the calculations happening in real time. The reputational damage. The PR nightmare. The moral liability of funding a man who'd financially and emotionally abused his wife. Biogenesis offered me $200 million this morning, I continued. Plus royalties. Plus a position as chief research officer. Plus funding for my own lab. I paused. I accepted. I also filed for divorce this afternoon. David made a sound like a wounded animal. The papers are being served at midnight tonight. The prenup he insisted on 7 years ago, the one his lawyer drew up. The one that says I get nothing in a divorce doesn't account for assets I acquired through my own intellectual property. Which means the $200 million is mine. The royalties are mine. My future is mine. I looked out at the audience. Saw some women with tears in their eyes. Saw men looking uncomfortable, ashamed. I'm telling you this because you deserve to know who you're investing in. David Thompson builds companies. But he tried to destroy his wife's career because it threatened his ego. He controlled my money, my time, my dreams. He made me small because he was afraid of how big I could become. I set the microphone down. The silence was absolute. Then someone started clapping. A woman at table 8. Standing up. Then another woman at table 15. Then a man at table 3. Within seconds, half the ballroom was on their feet, applauding. David stood alone on the stage, lit by the spotlight, exposed. Dr. Chen appeared at my elbow. There's a car waiting outside. Let's go. I walked down the stage stairs, through the tables, toward the exit. As I passed Diane, she grabbed at my arm. You ungrateful little, after everything we've done for you. You mean after everything I did for myself despite you? I pulled away. Tell David his investors can find him at home. Alone. The San Francisco night air hit my face as I stepped outside. Dr. Chen guided me to a black town car. How did you know to come? I asked as we pulled away from the Fairmont. You emailed me this morning after you signed with Biogenesis. Said you were tired of hiding. Asked if I'd help you tell the truth. She smiled. I've been your advisor for 3 years, Sarah. I've watched you sneak into the lab like a thief, work until 3 a.m., and still show up to your defense preparations prepared and brilliant. I've seen the bruises on your wrist from when he grabbed you. I knew what was happening, and I was waiting for you to be ready to fight back. I should have left years ago. Maybe. But you weren't ready then. You're ready now. She handed me her phone. It's already trending on Twitter. TrueVest CEO exposed for abusing wife scientist. His investors are pulling out. The board is calling for his resignation. I watched San Francisco blur past the window. Somewhere behind us, David was losing everything he'd built. His company. His reputation. His control. And I felt nothing but relief. That was 8 months ago. Let me tell you what happened next. David's company collapsed within 2 weeks. Investors pulled out en masse. The board removed him as CEO. He tried to fight the divorce, claiming I'd been deceptive by hiding my education and income. The judge laughed him out of court. Mr. Thompson, your wife obtained her PhD and patent while you were actively trying to prevent her from doing so. That's not deception. That's survival. The divorce was finalized in 4 months. I kept everything I'd earned. He kept his failed company and his shattered ego. I moved to Cambridge, into a brownstone near MIT. Started my position as Chief Research Officer at Biogenesis. My first act was establishing the Mitchell Fellowship, full funding for women in STEM who are leaving abusive relationships. We've supported 43 women so far. Women who hid their talents from controlling partners. Women who were told they were too stupid, too ambitious, too threatening. My clinical trials are in phase 2 now. The results are promising, better than promising. We might have a cure for certain aggressive cancers within 5 years. The royalties are already exceeding projections. Last month, my accountant told me my net worth had crossed $400 million. I bought myself a Tesla. Not because I needed one, but because David had always said electric cars were stupid liberal status symbols. I drove it past our old house in Palo Alto last week. There was a for sale sign on the lawn. David had to move back in with Diane. But the best moment came 3 months ago. I was giving a keynote at the American Cancer Society conference. 2,000 oncologists in attendance. As I took the stage, I saw him in the back row. David. He looked smaller somehow. Older. Diminished. I gave my presentation. Talked about the research, the breakthroughs, the lives we were saving. Got a standing ovation. Afterwards, as I was leaving through the back exit, he appeared. Sarah. Can we talk? I looked at him. Really looked. There was no fear anymore. No tightness in my chest. No automatic calculation of how to manage his mood. No, please. I just want to explain I was under a lot of stress. The company. The pressure. I didn't mean to. Yes, you did. My voice was calm. Final. You meant every email. Every restriction. Every time you made me feel small. You needed me to fail so you could feel successful. That's not fair. I loved you. You loved controlling me. There's a difference. I adjusted my bag. Inside was a copy of Nature Medicine with my research on the cover. Goodbye, David. Wait, I heard you're funding fellowships. For women. I think that's really great. Maybe I could contribute? Work together on something? I almost laughed. You want to be part of the solution after being the problem? I've changed. Good. Change for your next relationship. Stay away from me. I walked away. He didn't follow. Last week, my research won the Lasker Award. It's considered the American Nobel Prize. The ceremony is next month in New York. Dr. Chen will introduce me. I'm designing a lab at Biogenesis, a space where women scientists can work without fear, without control, without having to hide their brilliance. We're calling it the Liberation Lab. Dramatic, maybe, but accurate. Sometimes late at night, in my Cambridge brownstone, I think about that moment at the gala. When Dr. Chen appeared and my secret life became public. When I stood on that stage and told the truth. When I chose myself over the comfort of hiding. I think about all the women who are still hiding. Still lying about where they're going on Tuesday evenings. Still minimizing their achievements to protect fragile male egos. Still making themselves small. If you're reading this, if this is your story, please know it doesn't have to be forever. You can have the secret email account. The hidden dreams. The life you're building in the margins of the life you're allowed to have. And someday, when you're ready, you can step into the light. I did. And on the other side of that fear was everything I'd been told I couldn't have. Freedom. Success. Myself. The ballroom froze that night 8 months ago. But I started moving. And I haven't stopped since. My name is Dr. Sarah Mitchell. I have a PhD from MIT. I hold patents worth hundreds of millions of dollars. I'm saving lives. And I'm finally, completely, wonderfully free.